What is the number one thing that could destroy or make your singing voice? Well, it's right in the title, so you probably already know it. But let's walk you through exactly why breath control is so important.
Run, run, lost boy, they say to me.
So when talking about breath control, it's really important to understand the science of exactly what's going on so that we can visualize what's happening. Singing, unlike guitar, is something that's invisible. We're not able to tell you, pluck your vocal cords like this or blow through your vocal cords like that. Nobody can really see what's going on. But if we can imagine the process, then we'll be in a much better place to be able to sing properly. So first thing I want you to imagine that the vocal cords are kind of like a valve. So the vocal cords are right here inside the Adam's apple. For women, it's just the first notch inside your throat. That's called the larynx. So right inside there is where the vocal cords are housed on a horizontal level. They're in a V shape. If you put your finger right at the notch there, the bump, right there is where they insert and they vibrate. So they're folds of tissue that vibrate and they connect into the walls of the throat. So that's all the vocal cords are. Now, they cannot do anything without fuel to drive them. So we need a fuel source. Our fuel source is air. Air is the thing that's going to be turned into sound energy. So when we press the air out of our lungs, then we get sound energy to come out. Now, it's very important to imagine what the lungs are. The lungs are like a sponge. Pressure can be exerted upon them, but they cannot create movement. Like a sponge, they just kind of sit there. Something else needs to create the movement of the air in and out. And the thing that creates that movement on the inhale is called the diaphragm, which is a parachute type of muscle that moves up and down. And as it moves up and down, it inflates the lungs and deflates the lungs, inflates the lungs and deflates the lungs. So this is a little bit of the big picture, and I know it might be a little bit much, but we need to understand exactly what's going on. So we've got that diaphragm. Now, remember, very specifically, I said it engages on the inhale. So nobody sings while inhaling. We always sing while exhaling. So what is going to be exerting force on the diaphragm while we're exhaling? Well, it's a muscle in the abdominal cavity. It's called the transverse abdominis. It's a muscle that sits underneath the obliques. So you've got the obliques, you've got the rectus abdominis. Underneath all that is the transverse abdominis. What does the transverse abdominis do? Well, it moves the belly in and out. So if you get this sort of movement, and you could just do this with me, that's the engagement of the transverse abdominis. Now I can sit there and hold it. That's something called a vacuum. That's actually working that muscle and tightening that muscle. A lot of bodybuilders will use this in order to get that V-shaped taper to their body so that the waistline is very narrow. That is essentially what it does. It wraps around our whole midsection like a corset and it will suck everything in so that your gut doesn't stick out. That's the muscle that's going to be pressing. So when it presses inwards, it puts pressure on the diaphragm, which then makes the diaphragm rise, which then presses the air out of the lungs, through the throat, through the vocal cords. As long as the vocal cords meet in the middle, they'll start to vibrate, and then the sound waves come out of our mouth. That is the voice. So understanding this is crucial because it needs to work like that. A lot of people think that their voice is generated here. It's actually generated down here. So a lot of people don't think of that, don't focus on that, and they suffer as a result. All right. So the very first problem that I see when it comes to singing mistakes is singing from the chest. So a lot of singers will sing, and when they sing, they go, ah. You can notice the moment I'm about to make that sound, I already have tension. Watch my neck. Do you see that? All those muscles are tight. Now, in order to sing freely, I have to undo all that tension that I just built up in my breath. Why build all that issue when we can do it in a much easier way? So instead of, we want to go, see the difference? And a good way to feel this is if you just put one hand on your chest and I want you to breathe all your air out. Till there's nothing left. And when there's nothing left, just open your mouth and let your abs relax. You'll notice you'll just be full of air. those are the most efficient breaths. So if you're singing a phrase, when your legs don't work like they used to before, I should have brought a longer line. Now I'm full of air. So that's exactly what we want to be doing while we're singing. We don't want to be going, when your legs, that's going to be strain right off the bat. For sure, you're going to be straining. We got to train this for life. This is not just like, when I'm singing, I'm going to be singing from down here. When I'm breathing anytime, I want to try to breathe from my belly. So you want to try to get used to going, and you could just do this as an exercise every single day. Put one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and just practice sitting there and breathing into your belly. Now, I recommend getting used to doing this through your mouth, because when we're singing, we're generally not going to have enough time to breathe in through the nose. So each morning I get up, I die a little. Can't barely stand on my feet. I can't sit there and breathe all the way in. I'm totally off the rhythm, right? We got to make sure each morning I get up, I die little. Can't barely stand on my feet. So that I draw in from the mouth so that I get a really quick breath. That's the only way that it's going to happen in 99% of the songs that we're going to sing. Now, obviously, there are songs where you could, when your legs don't work like they used to before, and I can't sweep you off of your feet, when my hands don't play the strings the same way. So then you can kind of play with it a little bit more. But at the same time, that's not a good way to learn singing in general. So I encourage you, when you're practicing this, practice from the belly. The other main thing that I see people doing is that they engage the belly, or they allow the belly to come out when they're breathing in, but then they don't engage on the exhale. That's the whole key. So we got to breathe in, and make that a cycle. That every time I sing, let's do this very easily. Pick your favorite song and just sing the exact same line over and over again, cycling through this breath, right? So it might be, somebody to love, somebody to love, somebody to love. And if you notice, I'm just cycling through that breath. You could pick any line in any song that you want to do. It doesn't have to be that. It could be, wise men say, wise men say, wise men say. And that's all there is to it, just cycling through that breath. And if that at first feels too difficult, then you could just do it on a regular vowel. Any vowel will do. At any pitch. So it could be could be and keep a hand on your belly button just to watch that the muscle is engaging on the breath out. If this can start to become your new way of approaching your voice, whether it be speaking, right? When I'm speaking, I'm doing the same thing, or whether it be singing, then I'm going to have a totally different approach to my voice. My voice will change because of it. This is going to be the number one thing that will make a massive difference to your voice. So if you could start to make this a new habit, part of your muscle memory, game changer, I'm telling you guys. The other big mistake that I see a lot of singers making is focusing too much on the diaphragm. So I've already alluded to this, but the diaphragm is not the muscle to focus on. So number one, we don't have any conscious control over the diaphragm. We can't consciously, except for breathing in, we can't tighten, or like what I did with my belly, just doing this. You can't do that with the diaphragm without an inhale, exhale. So why not focus on just the muscles that really make the difference and tilt the scales, which is the transverse abdominis. Another pitfall that I find a lot of people fall into is they don't realize that posture makes a big difference here. So when we're talking about the breath, we got to make sure that we're not collapsing in on this muscle. So if I'm sitting like this, like how we are when we're on our smartphones, then I'm totally collapsing the abdominal wall. So I'm not actually able to take a good breath. So for singers, when we're singing, we want to make sure to sit at the edge of the chair. When we sit at the edge of the chair, we're forced to engage more abdominals, and that's going to help us engage the right support muscles. Now, if we're slouching, what we got to get used to doing is finding the correct posture. And in order to find the correct posture, we can often use our standing position to find that. So if I just stand up here, it's much easier to find a correct posture. So the goal is to have our ear in line with our shoulder, which is in line with our hip. So we want to find this sort of posture and then let it relax there. And once we find this sort of posture, then we're going to be able to sing much more effectively without caving in the abdominal wall, which is crucial for healthy singing. And the great thing is that there are a lot of singing exercises that focus on this as long as you consciously try to bring this out in your technique. So for example, if I put my hand on my belly and I do an exercise called the puffy cheek, that's a really good one to get the abdominals working. So to feel this out, if you just go, you'll notice your abs work like crazy when you're doing that. That naturally engages this muscle. And so if you can start to use this within the context of singing, so now I'm starting to use that support naturally under my singing. So if I just go, it's pretty simple because I'm just allowing that continuation of the support to carry the sound. So I don't have to engage here, tighten my throat. Everything stays nice and loose. Another exercise that could be used here is that's a great exercise. What I'm doing is I'm rolling my tongue like a and I'm puffing my cheeks out as well. That's a personal favorite of mine as well. I've got other ones like the lip roll, but you got to make sure that the focus is here. If I don't focus down here, I'm not going to engage. I can do that exercise without really engaging. Another one is just the regular tongue trill. With this one, I recommend not going like I just did. You want to go almost like through an oo vowel. And that way you're going to engage the abdominals as well. All of these are specifically designed to be able to get support working better for your voice. And that's why using them and warming up with them every single day helps your voice so much. Now, I know many of you may have questions at this point, and it's kind of just scraping the surface of this very deep concept of breath management when it comes to singing. But if you're interested in going even deeper with me, I'm going to have a video course ready for you guys that's going to go through all of these details and more to really get in as deep as I possibly can on the subject of breath management and breathing for singing in general. So if you're interested in joining me there, click the link down below to get a limited time low price. Thank you so much for joining me here. If you want to continue learning about the voice, I've got tons of videos over here. Click on this one next because it's really going to help you.